So I'm making a part 2 of the Mercedes door lock video. In part 1, we worked out how to remove and reinstall the rear door lock on a 2010 Mercedes E-Class. I also tried a repair of the door lock actuator using a $30 motor. That worked for a while. Unfortunately, it then failed. So in this video, part 2, go through replacing that door lock actuator again, this time replacing the entire actuator, and see what went wrong with the repair. So I'll very briefly go through the removal and reinstall of the actuator. I covered it in a lot more detail in part 1. This was the door that I fixed and it is no longer locking. If I unlock it, nothing happens. When it first started playing up, I could open the back door using the internal door handle, but at some point it stopped locking completely. Question is, has that repair of the lock mechanism failed, or have I just mucked up the install and something's come loose? Let's take that door card off. There's a little cover in here that conceals the screws. First we'll take that off. There's some hooks at the bottom here. So there's these bottom hooks to pop out, and then a couple of top hooks, plus one at the end. Now we can see those two T30 Torx screws. With those loose, we can now pop out the clips. Before I completely remove the door card, I need to get the window in the right position. And we need to get access to a bolt to release the window. This one is a Torx T30. I'm just going to loosen that, I won't remove it completely. So that Torx screw is releasing this rubber clamp, and it clamps onto this piece of glass here, right along the bottom. The door lock cable, 2 tabs on here. Squeeze at the bottom and pull. The door handle cable. Now, as far as I can tell, there aren't any airbags mounted in the back door itself, but there is this impact sensor right here. So if you're disconnecting anything to do with that, you risk setting off the airbag. So if you need to touch anything related to that, you want the battery disconnected. You want to disconnect the battery after you have the window in the right position. And we'll take out these wires. There's a speaker cable clipped in here, pulling firmly on the plastic. I don't see any tabs. And we'll disconnect these last 2 connectors going to the door card itself. We'll leave the green one alone. Clip underneath here, this door card is now free. Next, the door handle comes off. Out comes the rubber grommet. And then we go fishing for the little bolt. Gotcha. Pins out, and that piece releases. You'll need a very long Torx T20 to get this door handle off. It needs to go in more than 16 centimeters. I found this one, I'll leave a link below, off AliExpress. Now we can take this door handle off, sliding it sideways. Gentle with this one, there's a wire attached. And there's 2 Torx T20s. Don't forget the one hiding behind here. There looks to be a little bit of Loctite on these. 3 Torx T30s. They hold the lock actuator to the door, but they're also attached to the steel plate. So the whole thing has to come out as one assembly. Drill out these rivets, leave those 3 alone that hold the window regulator. You'll need to knock in the pin for the original rivets. Steel pin you won't be able to drill. These are my replacement rivets, so they're soft. And go around and do the rest. You want a rag or a cloth or something to protect your paint. This comes out that way, it's bound to hit that. I need a bit more slack in this, more room. I'll remove this cable tie. Careful you don't cut your wires. Plug this rubber grommet. Unplug a rubber grommet. Whatever you do with it. Okay, there's a bit more movement there now. Okay, that's out. I'll remove this connector, push that tab. Oh, what's going on here? At some point I've broken this. Anyway, it shouldn't cause me any trouble because it's just holding the electrical connector in place, but that's a pain. Pull this tab up. And this cover comes off. Take that cover off, push these rubber grommets out. Now we need to remove these 3 nylon connectors. Torx T25, just to push these inner ones through. And I need a 9mm socket to push this back in. Notice I'm using a big box to support this, so I take the weight off that cable over there. On the bench now, you can now see that separation. Yep. This top cover, it is part of the support for these gears. The part 1 video, this motor here seemed to be the problem, so I pulled out and replaced just that motor. Let's test that and see if that is still working. Test it with a 9-volt battery. Unlocking it just fine. I don't know if the problem was this lifting off or the problem was these clips coming undone. This isn't designed to be taken apart and put back together again. If you decide to repair your old motor, I still think that's an option. What I would suggest is some way of fixing this properly, perhaps a glue or a resin to hold this in place. If you don't mind the risk of having to do this job twice, then have a go at repairing this. I'll need to swap these 2 plastic brackets over to the new actuator and likely some of these cables as well. Let's have a look at the replacement one. I got this one off Spare 2. I'll leave a link in the description. I have keyless go, so that has 8 pins on this connector. I believe the ones without keyless go have 4 pins. So for that reason alone, they're not going to be interchangeable. I'll swap those parts over. See these little tabs that hold this in place? You'll see that I've nipped the corners off that. See the previous video for details. With that cover out of the way, you can now see these cables. Transfer those onto the new one. Let's start with the door lock cable. Takes a bit of force to get that one in. Check those work all right. The old cover reused. Slide this one on. Little locators for the tab. And that's ready to go back in the vehicle. Reinstall the new lock motor. These need a lot of force to get them into the 3 holes. Those 3 are in. Trick is getting these back in. These little nylon rivets, you might call them, are blind. I drilled that out with a 3mm drill, then run a tiny little bolt through there. If you've got a really big G-clamp, you might be able to wrap all the way around here and press them in. Otherwise, drill and a screw to pull them through. Run these cables back through. And we'll feed this cable back through. Locked. Attaches these 3 holes using rivets. These ones are nothing fancy. Next, reattach the door handle mechanism. First, the door handle cable. And it slides in. Notice, because I broke this connector attachment, I've cable tied it back on. Just go around and do a check that it's all working correctly. Its inside door handle's working, outside door handle. And make sure it's unlocked. There we go. Two locator pins, one here and one there. A bit of blue Loctite on these Torx. The one on this side has a slightly bigger head on it. Still a Torx T30. Putting the door handle back in, T20s. Make sure you get this wire wrapped around here. This notch here needs to connect onto that white piece of nylon there. Once you get that lined up right, it goes in pretty easy. So pull the door handle out. Slot that one in. And then we can do up the screw that holds it in. Just pinching that up tight remember it's going into a plastic thread. I'll make sure a few of them slot in right before I clamp one down. Jeepers. Nine of these quite large rivets, 1/4 inch diameter there. Your standard rivet gun's not going to go that high. You'll need a heavy duty one that goes up to 1/4 inch or 6.4 millimeters. So I'll leave a link to some part numbers. So these rivets are about 11 millimeters deep, well, 1/2 inch, 12.5 millimeters diameter there. Drop that window back into place. Tighten up that T30, Torx T30. A comment on the last video, there's some blue Loctite on the screw, so just doing it up, you risk it coming undone. But somebody else left a comment that when they took it all the way out, it dropped down inside. Then they had to take the whole thing apart again. You decide if you want to pull that screw out and put some Loctite on. Time to put that door card back on. All those cables and connectors reinstalled. Door card click back in. Reverse of removal, so start at the top, into that rail sideways, and then work your way around. Make sure they're lined up before you give it a whack. A couple of T30s. So it looks like we need to start at the top, slide it up, and then roll the bottom in. Then this little rubber grommet to cover the door lock hole. Make sure that kitty lock is in the down position. You don't want to be locking yourself out. Check that the handle only pulls out and springs back in before you close the door. Likewise with the outside door handle. Hopefully it opens. It does, good. So we'll check that works. It's locking, unlocking. Keyless go is working. And when the car thinks it's locked, it's actually locked. So that's worked so far. I'll keep an eye on that over the next few drives, make sure it's still behaving. Between the two videos, you've got two options. Have a go at repairing your old lock using a $30 motor, or replace the whole assembly. Look, if you've got the time or you don't have the money, go with the part 1 video. You'll just need to find a better way of attaching these two clamshells together. Otherwise, follow what I've done in the part 2 video, replace the whole door lock actuator. I've used a aftermarket actuator. Of course, you can get genuine actuators from Mercedes Benz. I think I was quoted about $800 or $900. This one was much less than that. If you work out a better way of attaching these two together, please do your own video, or at the very least leave a comment giving some tips for others.